Welcome to the MJSA podcast. My guest today is John Kennedy. He's the president of the Jewelers Security Alliance, the industry organization dedicated to providing crime information and assistance to the jewelry industry and law enforcement since 1883. I always think MJSA goes back to 1903. I think Jewelers Security Alliance has us beat there a bit. John has been the president of JSA since 1992 and has a background in law and is recognized in the industry as the go-to expert on security and safety issues. So, John, welcome to the MJSA podcast.
Travis, thanks for having me.
There's a lot of attention paid, as you know, and certainly with good reason, to cybercrime and online fraud and those types of scams. In fact, the July 2022 issue of MJSA Journal has a feature article on that very topic. And while a very important one when it comes to protecting your business's bottom line and data, the more current critical issue right now seems to be that of violent and dangerous crime, robberies, attacks, really putting jewelers' lives at risk. When did you first start to see this uptick? It's obviously something that's always been an issue, but it seems like things have gotten worse. When did we start to see that uptick, and what do you think is driving it at this point?
Well, I mean, we have always had, these smash and grab robberies, but, they went way down, obviously, during the COVID era, not only because the stores were closed, but because, people they were worrying who's coming in the door and lots of other things. There were very few people in the malls, those sort of issues. However, sure. We started to see it pick up around the end of last year, November or so, October, November. And, it became very violent, especially in California, where it really was originally concentrated. And you would get, 7 or 9 people to come into the store and smash your cases and take product. And it was all over California. I mean, I think we have something like 50 or 60 cases in California since that time, which is a big number.
Yeah.
But it's also happened elsewhere. I mean, we had a very serious one in New Jersey just, last week, 2 weeks ago. And you're seeing them all over, frankly. The reasons for it, crime is it's an art and a science. So, what's in people's head? These are certainly more disturbed times. Things are there's a lot of unrest out there. In general, just everything,
Sure,
people lost jobs, moved, changed, lost, and now maybe they're not getting government assistance and things like that. So there's just a lot of anger, a lot of upset. And I mean, this translates into crime as well. I mean, some of them are gangs that have been doing this forever. Right. But then others are just now recruited.
Right. And as you said, a certain level of desperation, Let's talk a little bit about what jewelers can do specifically to protect themselves. It kind of seems like there's probably two different parts here. The first being, what can they do in advance? Like, are there things that they can do and think about to mitigate risk as much as that's possible? And then, when these break-ins or robberies occur, what needs to be done or what has to be done? So starting with ahead of time, what kinds of things do you advise jewelers to do to protect themselves at this point?
Well, beforehand, it's a very tricky business because these smash and grab robberies have been happening primarily in malls. The vast majority have been in malls. So the idea of having a locked door or having buzz people in and whatnot is really not feasible. There's limits to what we recommend. I mean, we recommend, for example, that you have laminated showcases that can withstand blows from hammers and sledgehammers. There's such product that you can get, and it's widely distributed. And if you can get showcases, you can get showcases that can withstand like 20 blows from a hammer.
Right.
This can slow them down and reduce your risk and even discourage them from even being there. I mean, you can have a guard. I mean, you can have a guard in the store, which could conceivably discourage them. It's not 100% sure either, but it has some discouraging value. You can not put all of your product in one showcase or high-end product. Put high values all together that will act as a great appeal to those people who want to come in and take your product. Those would be like just, three of the things that I would suggest in that regard. I mean, once they're in the store, there's one main bit of advice, and that is don't try to interfere with them. I mean, they're standing there with hammers or sledgehammers or very heavy weapons, and somebody might have a gun as well. I mean, you don't know. It may not be displayed. They don't want to display the gun and whatnot, but there may be a gun there, and you don't want to get your head cracked open or, your shoulder broken when you're pushed to the ground. So do not try to interfere with them. Don't chase them. We've also seen on several occasions that jewelers have tried, and these were in malls too, tried to shoot the people as they were fleeing, which of course is crazy because you'll wind up killing some innocent person in the mall, or even if you succeed, if you use that word, in hitting one of the fleeing suspects, you might be prosecuted for, homicide, crime for shooting him. So it's, you have to rely on your insurance is really what you have to rely on. I mean, you have to have insurance to take care of any losses that happen in this regard. On these, particularly on the smash and grabs we're not seeing them attempting to get into the safe or go to the back or anything. They want to be out of there in a minute. Right. Usually, they're timed and you can see it on the surveillance video often, and they're out of there in a minute. They're going to get what they can get quick. And sometimes they hit the jackpot and get high value goods. Sometimes they miss the mark and they wind up getting, much lower value goods. I think that there's two others that I'd like to highlight. One of them is we're seeing a lot of these burglaries these are nighttime burglaries involving retail stores, involving the cutting of power lines or the disabling of alarms, and then possibly coming in from a rooftop, cutting through and coming in from a rooftop or coming in from a store next door. We're seeing there was a big upsurge in the use in the disabling of alarm systems and electrical systems. They'll go for your power box and disable it. The advice we would give here is that you must respond to every notice from your from your alarm company, not just when they say you have an alarm condition, because they give you other messages as well. Sometimes they say there's a power outage, or they say there's a communication error. Well, if you've got a power outage or a communication error, you're being targeted for a burglary. Go down to the store with the cops and check it out, and you're in trouble. Don't ignore any message from your from your alarm company with respect to that. And also make sure you have enough reserve power, that you have enough battery power to keep the systems going for, even 96 hours, a long period of time. It's very cheap, 3 days or something like that. You can get power. It's very helpful. So that would be one thing. We're seeing a lot of that. It's a high profile crime. We're seeing a lot of it. There's big losses. And the other thing we're seeing, and this is a post-COVID thing, and this is kind of interesting because it's post-COVID. During COVID, we did not see distraction thefts by, and I'll use the word advisedly, gypsies or Roma people, because they couldn't come into the country. Travel was restricted and they did not come in. Since also around last November or approximately November, we see a sharp uptick in these distraction thefts by these Roma people who go around and attempt to fool you, to get into your showcase, to have you put out a lot of product at once, to try to get it into their possession, and to leave without paying for it. And the advice we give here is that you must control the product that you're showing. We say show one item at a time. When you're finished with that, put it away lock it up and take more out. You can't leave the showcases open during the presentation. If you leave them open during the presentation, somebody will take it. Usually they work in teams. They may have two, they may have three. One of them is going to try to buy product. The other is going to try to get into your showcase. So we're advising to be very careful in that regard. And you must know where your product is at all times, and you have to keep it locked up.
One thing that you had mentioned at the beginning was that obviously things slowed down a bit in terms of COVID during things being locked down and closed and stores being closed, malls. And the other thing that actually, obviously was sort of put on pause was all of the jewelry industry trade shows, which now are starting to obviously pick back up. And that has always been a source too when I first was in the industry and started to travel to shows, that was where I first started to get a lot of advice about, being just traveling in general, traveling locally to shows, the safety issues there. So that's something that's probably back on the table. And I know that's something that you've spoken about before, but trade shows are obviously, bring a certain amount of risk. What kind of advice do you typically give to jewelers who are back into the trade show game at this point, who are maybe starting to do a little bit more of it? And what is the advice in terms of safety in general when it comes to trade shows?
We would advise, if you're an exhibitor, to ship your goods to and from the show, as opposed to hand carry them in and hand carry them out. You have a much more significant risk. Obviously, there's very little risk, to none to you at all if you're shipping it in. But if you're hand carrying it in, you're around town, you're coming in by plane, etc., there's all kinds of risks on the way. The gangs do concentrate on the shows. They know that it's, the Super Bowl of possible jewelry when you go to one of the main shows. And so that's one piece of advice. What we really see, though, at the shows is that jewelers carelessly leave product, exhibitors carelessly leave product in the booths overnight. I mean, it seems weird, and why do they do it? They can take it to the show vault, no problem. May have to wait, 20 minutes or something. But what happens is they leave it under the showcase overnight, and it's taken. And there's all kinds of people could take it. I mean, other exhibitors could take it. I mean, people in the cleaning staff or whoever from the show, not the show staff, but the hall, people who are employed at the hall in one way or another. Stuff happens and stuff goes missing. The remarkable thing, though, this is the remarkable part, is that you have like tens of billions of dollars, for example, at JCK, just to take an example, tens of billions of dollars in jewelry. And you have like 20, 30,000 people. And the losses are, I don't want to diminish it, but the losses are trivial, frankly, in terms of the scale of what you're talking about. And it usually, almost always, is through exhibitor carelessness. When you bring up about this trade shows and this related issue, because it could happen at trade shows too, we're seeing a pattern of customers being identified and followed who are wearing very expensive jewelry. Particularly in the LA area, it's been rampant in LA, but it's happened elsewhere. People wearing very high-end watches, very high-end jewelry, and they're spotted not just coming from a jewelry store. They can be spotted at a restaurant or a club, a nightclub and whatnot, and they're followed and robbed either by their car in the street or at their homes. And the recommendation would be just be prudent about wearing your jewelry. Just be prudent. It's kind of dangerous times, at least that's perception. And you should be a little prudent about wearing your jewelry. One of the things people should be aware of is that these crimes can happen anywhere. That, some people think that, well, I'm in a little town, it's not going to happen to me. I got a little store, no one's coming after me. Not true. Not true. I mean, our statistics indicate that I think, maybe something didn't happen in Wyoming last year, but, every other state practically is going to have stuff happen to one degree or another. Everyone is at risk. and that regardless of where you are, you have to take proper security measures and have security. Frankly, it always has to be in the back of your mind. I know your primary responsibility is to sell jewelry, but you want to make sure you stay safe and you keep yourself and your loved ones safe.
Right, and that you're still around to run your business and and sell jewelry and take care of your family. Absolutely. John, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Appreciate the insight and advice.
Thank you, Travis. Thanks for having me.